Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the web conference of joint web conference of Symantec Corporation and Seclore. Topic for today is webcast on how to protect information that needs to leave your perimeter. At this time, I would like to turn over the call to your host today, Mr. Shashi Bhalla, Head of Pre-Sales Information Security India, and Mr. Vishal Gupta, CEO of Seclore. Please go ahead, Mr. Shashi.
Thank you so much, Vedi. Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Shashi Bhalla. I head the pre-sales for Symantec India. From an information security side, I have Vishal Gupta, who is CEO of Seclore. We would like to welcome you all for this particular call. The purpose basically is how you can secure your information when leaving your organization and when it is outside your organization. So we will be, this is 1 hour conference. We will be running you through as to how jointly the solution can help you, your organization, to protect your confidential information. The agenda today is introduction. We will be covering the introduction from Symantec and Seclore side. Background and problem statement. We will talk about as to why data loss prevention and Seclore together, and how it is going to help you. What is required primarily to securing your information within the enterprise and securing your information when it leaves your organization. And then combining the both solution, we will have a short demo to showcase how both the solutions jointly work, and then followed by question answer session. So you can send the question and we can consolidate them and answer at the end of the conference. So let's look at the problem statement. Now problem statement is pretty straightforward, where we talk about 64% of the loss caused by well-meaning insider. Now these are the employees who are just trying to do their job and either don't know how to handle confidential data or even what data is considered confidential, but are putting their organization at risk of breach in the process. We have done a study with Ponemon Institute, where we got 64% of the companies surveyed experience some sort of data loss due to negligence, human factor. That's one of the biggest factor which push the organization at risk. The second one is basically 50% of the employee, these are all malicious insiders. They take the data out and use it for purposes in their next organization. So that's another thing. Again, this percentage number which we are looking at from the study which we have conducted. Now, collaboration with external agencies is constantly increasing. Most of the organizations today expanding their boundaries, where they are dealing with vendors, they are dealing with partners, they are dealing with customers. There are lawyers, auditors, and the board members. So information sharing is happening across these organizations. That leads us to a lot of data which is open there. Proliferation of mobile devices defeating all perimeter, because as we are working with multiple people across geos, across cities, the data is moving from one location to another. That's another thing which organization is looking at securing. Then the last thing is on this slide is compliance framework are becoming complex to interpret, costly to comply, and costlier to non-comply. So let's look at if you as an organization is looking at implementing ISO framework, then I'm giving you an example. You need to go through the ISO framework and what is it you need to secure, what kind of data should not move out. Companies like Symantec, Seclore helps you with those templates and make sure that the process of identifying the confidential data, which is as per the government regulation or the framework, is already there, and you start working or start blocking the communication or start monitoring the communication which is going out. Let's get into the next slide. Now, what we are talking about here is who is being attacked today. Now, when we say this, the short answer to this is everyone. Okay, but attacks differ based on the intended victim. We can break down the target of today's malware attack into 4 categories, each with different type of attacks or repercussion from the attacks. Enterprises are of course most concerned with the targeted attack, whether they are an APT or not. Data breaches continue. Okay, there is an end user disruption of infected machine, and with the return of hectism, DDoS are the concern. So that's one area which most of the organization enterprises, when you move to a small business, the challenges are different. Okay, small businesses are being targeted because they have less defense in the first place and can suffer losses from banking trojans. They can suffer banking from business disruption which is happening, because small businesses are they look at protecting their information differently. The third vector here is the end user. Now, when we look at end user is being targeted by malware authors who want to steal their identity and con them into buying bogus security software. For the non-computer literate, the cost of malware clean can be very expensive if you look at. Okay. The fourth one is government. Now, government, you might have seen in last few years, we have seen a lot of targeted attacks like Stuxnet and Hydra have shown the potential of cyber sabotage and cyber espionage. We will talk about them a little bit more. Okay, so that's basically as the threat landscape changing today, the loss of information from different sources has become more, protecting that information became more important for us. Now, let's get into what is there at stake. If we look at the information, what kind of confidential information? Now, there can be information which is credit card related information, or there are medical records, or intellectual properties. Intellectual property, if you look at from a perspective for each organization, it can be different. Okay, social security number or any framework like you have India PAN card number, you have your other IDs which you want to secure, maybe license details. Then the next one is financial documents, which are very crucial for organization. Now, how can we make sure the financial document, which is or maybe balance sheet, before it gets published, it should be secured within the premises, and when it is leaving out also it should be secure till the time we are making those public announcements. So that's another area which is at stake. Mergers and acquisition and strategy, internal auditing, and the HR record. Now, I want to emphasize here the confidential data for one department cannot be confidential for others and may not be confidential for next department. So the challenge for each department within organization itself is different. Now, when we look at the next slide, the phases of DLP. So let's look at what is required first. The slide is coming, sorry guys, slide is coming a bit slow.
I think the place where we start would be, classify the data first, right, maybe.
So you can continue, Vishal.
Okay. Yeah, so let me just jump in since there's a delay on the slide for Shashi. I think the first step to figuring out a comprehensive policy around securing the data would be, first step is we need to classify the data. As of now, we have every enterprise has tons of data, right from picnic pictures of the last branch picnic to the most confidential information, and unfortunately all of this today in most cases lies in one big bunch. So to be able to classify this data into different segments as per the policies, required sometimes by external compliance frameworks and sometimes by internal security policies, is really the first step of the process. And then once this information is classified, then the second step would be to discover where exactly is confidential information, right? Is it lying on desktops or laptops or mobile devices or SharePoint systems or file servers or mailboxes, right? Where is this information? And then go on to actually monitor. Step one, monitor what is exactly happening to this information and who is doing it, right? So the first three steps is just about, self-awareness of what is the present, status of the enterprise as far as securing the information goes.
Correct.
Right.
And if you look at most of the customer where we meet jointly, one of the biggest challenge for any of the customer is how do I make sure that I classify right data. Okay, so that becomes a first bigger challenge. Now once I do all these three steps, then it is basically dependent on how best we can protect this communication. Now I am able to classify, I am able to discover where exactly the data is residing, and then I am able to where the data is going, who is user is sending. The protection piece comes, there are two ways to protect it. One, against unauthorized distribution. The second one is against unauthorized usage. So first part, when I am talking about unauthorized distribution, DLP, Symantec DLP plays the document which are, it basically gives you where to send, whom should not be, the data should not be sent. Then against unauthorized usage, Seclore basically helps us protect that. We will talk about that in detail. Now the fifth point here is allow protected confidential information to go to external agency, cloud services. As I discussed in my previous slide, whereas I'm communicating with my vendors, I'm communicating with my customers, I'll have to make sure there are certain information which may be confidential from an organization perspective when it is going to a wrong hand, but I still want to communicate with communicate with my vendor, communicate with my customer. Then how can I make sure that the communication which I'm sending out is properly secure so that it can be protected in between the channel. How can I control that usage of that information within and outside of the enterprise? And auditing who did. So this we will be covering in the next phase of the presentation. Vishal, next slide.
Yeah, the phases of DLP.
Yeah. So now look at this. Who all are the phases of DLP? It's not just about, so let us understand one point here. DLP isn't just about addressing certain type of data. It's also about working with people to help prevent data loss. Okay. People create risk, and these are what we call the phases of DLP. They are probably familiar to you, and in a few minutes I'll go through some example of how DLP addresses the risk posed by each. Now let's look at first one, the well-meaning insider. Now well-meaning insider is nothing but a loyal employee just trying to do his or her job, not always understanding how to handle confidential data. That's one of the biggest challenges we have seen. Or even what constitutes confidential data. Next is cutting corner to make things more efficient, but often doing careless things and putting sensitive data at risk of loss in process. So well-meaning insider is like a bigger chunk where they don't know as to what is confidential from an organization perspective and what is not. Most of the time that is what we have seen. Then you have malicious insider. Malicious insider, as I mentioned earlier, there are employees that have sense of entitlement to the data that they may have been responsible for developing and often don't hesitate to take a copy with them. This is particularly troubling for employees who are offered jobs with your competition. And as we know from our survey with the Phonemon Institute, many formal employees that take data with them often intend to use it on their new job. The third phase of DLP is a malicious outsider. Now, then there are the competitor, hacker, and criminals, the ones we hear about all the time in the news. People and organizations who are motivated to steal information for profit, whether for the organization or for personal use. They gain entry to your organization and look for easy targets. Okay, so that's basically three phases which we talk about from the perspective of data loss. Well-meaning insider, which knows most of the things, but they are not aware of what is confidential. Then you have malicious insider, and then you have malicious outsider. Now look at the solution side of it. Now when we have dealt with these, how to deal with these three the phases, you need more than a technology solution, actually, if you ask me, because most of the time people who are intended to take the data, they will definitely take. So one of the biggest requirement is more than a technology, and that's where DLP comes in. While perimeter and system security are necessary control that are focused on keeping the bad things out, they cannot solve the problem of data loss. These solutions simply do not address these fundamental questions. Where is your confidential data? Okay. Now, when I talk about this, I'm saying which data types are the top priority for the organization to protect. Customer data, corporate data, or intellectual property. Now, when I come to know this, who is the owner of that data? Symantec DLP risk assessment data shows that 1:50 network files are wrongly exposed. When I'm saying wrongly exposed, it might people normally working on a file, they keep it on their machine and they transfer it onto the server also, and it may be residing on other places. So this is very important to understand where is your confidential data residing. The discover module of Symantec which is there helps you discover. Now before discovery, as Vishal has mentioned earlier, the classification is important. What is the data which you want to monitor? Now there are two ways to do it. One, you can do an automated classification, which Vishal will talk about in detail. Another one, you sit across with your business owners, business team, to understand as to what is confidential for their department. Okay. Now once I get that sense as to where is your confidential data, the next step I need to understand is how the data is being used. Now, what confidential data is being copied to USB? That's one use case. Or sent by an email or IM or FTP. Who is copying the data on the endpoint or sending this data across the network? Who would care most if the data was leaked outside the company? Symantec DLP risk assessment, again, data shows that 1:400 email contains confidential information. For example, let's assume each employee sends only 20 emails per day. At the same company where 10,000 employees are there, that's over 500 emails that contains confidential data. It's very important for us to understand that how the data is being used. The third piece is how best to prevent its loss. So how can you stop it? You want to block that, or you just want to monitor it, or you want to do an encryption, integrate with the encryption solution, or the one which we are talking about today, integrate with IRM solution, which can make sure the data is protected within and outside the organization. We'll get into that detail. Next slide.
This is how does explaining how does the Symantec DLP work, the find it and fix it.
Okay. So now when we look at this, there are few fundamental things which we need to understand. One, the overall how we are going to deploy the solution within your premises. Second, I need to understand, just give me. So there are two things. One is detection, another one is the response. So while we have done the classification, we have reached to a next stage where we need to figure out how it is being used. Now what data we need to monitor. So content is very important. as to what do we need to monitor, whether it is credit card, social security number, intellectual properties, and then we need to look at who is doing, what is being sent, and where it is being sent. So the first phase, when we look at the DLP, is find the data. The second phase is the response. Now response can be two ways. One, what is the action I want to take on that data? One, I can do the notification, or I can do the justification there, or I integrate, I can apply an IRM template, or I can just go ahead and block it. The second thing is, if I don't want to look at the blocking piece, I can look at the notification. Where all I need to send the notification? A user's manager, or maybe information security team if organization has, so that data can be rightly managed. Okay, so that's two things which we need to understand from a DLP standpoint. Next slide, Vishal.
Well, Shashi, this is the one about explaining what are the Symantec DLP products.
Correct. So now look at this. We have got the complete coverage from storage till the network side. Now when I talk about storage, we cover almost all the data repository, be it your file server, be it your SharePoint, or be it your endpoints, where we can go ahead and do the discovery of data. Why it is important for you or for your organization is to understand from a starting phase itself as to where exactly your confidential data is residing based on the policy set you have defined. Now you may find the data is residing in 10 places. Okay, now that's where it gives you, it's kind of inventory of your confidential data across organization. Then you can make sure that how you want to protect that. If it is residing in 10 places, what should I do? Should I copy or move the data from those 9 locations to a central location, or let me keep it there only? Or maybe apply an IRM template so that the data which is residing on public places is secure, and only users who are required to access that can access those information. The third area, which is a unique advantage for you customer from Symantec side, is called data insight. And one of the cases when I'm discovering the data, I will get a very basic level of information as to what is the kind of access control list I have for a specific file. Now what data insight gives you, it goes a step further and it provides you more information as to, let's look at this way, one file, how many times that file is being accessed, who all people have accessed this file, who last accessed the file. I can create a better information security policy for organization. Let's look at this way. If a user is accessing a particular file 10 times and it is being reported by data insight, and that user is not intended to or not supposed to access that particular file, we can either go and educate that user, or we can restrict him not to access those kind of information. That's the storage piece. The second one is the endpoint. Endpoint is again endpoint, whether it is your fixed desktops or the laptops which are moving outside. How can we make sure the data, confidential data which belongs to the organization is not residing on those machines? That endpoint discovery solution basically helps you discover data on those across the organization. Once I discover it, how can we prevent it? Now again, same case. Prevention from what? If somebody is trying to copy onto USB, somebody trying to print a confidential document, somebody is trying to upload a confidential document using webmail, or at the FTP site, or at the Dropboxes, or they are sending it through mail, from the endpoint. So I can go ahead and monitor, I can block it, I can encrypt it, and I can apply I can integrate with IRM and provide you the protection. Mobile email monitoring, we basically work with it monitors the high risk mobile channel and prevent confidential data from being sent from iOS devices and Android. It basically consists of two detection servers, mobile email monitoring and mobile prevention. Okay. Now, email monitor primarily monitors the corporate email being downloaded to the native mail client on a company and employee own iPads, iPhones, and Android phones, and create an inventory of confidential data being stored on them. It also provides security teams with the visibility into mobile data loss risk so that they can define an effective BYOD security policy. Second one is prevention. Now, when I talk about prevention, monitor and protect network communications sent from company-owned devices. It detects confidential data in outbound corporate emails sent by Microsoft Exchange ActiveSync, webmail, and third-party applications such as Dropbox, Facebook over HTTP, and HTTPS tunnels. It can also block email and web posts that violates your mobile security policy. So that covers your endpoint. And network side, we almost monitor all the ports where the data is moving out of your organization. Primarily, we sit at the gateway or monitor your internal interface of firewall. If you have multiple exit gateway, we can monitor all exit gateways. The second one is network prevent for email. So while we monitor almost all the protocol, we block the email and web communication. Then it binds to the management platform. Now let's look at the next slide where we are talking about the coverage. I'll not spend much time here. What we do, we can cover. We can monitor your endpoint data leaving out using channels, which is web, USB. We can talk about network, email, web, HTTP, FTP, IM, storage side. We can talk about file servers, Exchange, SharePoint, and Lotus Notes. Now, next slide.
Shashi, you want to talk about the DLP for mobile devices?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we can monitor the mobile data. Okay, where I have already talked about this. Confidential data being downloaded or uploaded from mobile device can be monitored using corporate email, web application, or any third-party application. We can move to next slide, which is cloud. So let's look at, most of the customer today is moving to cloud. The people are talking about Office 365. Some of them are moving to Google Apps. Symantec can help monitor communication which is moving through cloud. You can and it can also help you monitor your private cloud infrastructure as well. If you are using Citrix, Synapse, or Zendesk or VMware vShield. Or we can have a hybrid infrastructure where it can integrate with hosted messaging and web security, which can be Google, Postini, Microsoft Forefront, or Symantec.cloud as well. Okay. Now, next one, Vishal, is the incident.
That's right.
So let's look at this. What all information when we monitor the communication, we give it to you. We give you what is the incident. What is the priority of that incident? Who is sending that communication? Or if I'm monitoring where the data is residing, what was the location of that data? If I'm moving that data, where I have moved, then what is the access in the third number? It talks about what is the access control of on a particular file. Then it gives you the incident snapshot as to what is the content which we have monitored. Okay. Then the next phase is, once I detected this, who is the user? Who is his manager? Now we get this information from Active Directory and we'll make sure then we initiate a workflow so that the manager can be informed using this. It gives you a detailed information. The seventh one is basically smart response. There are multiple ways to achieve smart response, whereas I can encrypt it, or I can block certain communication. And the third one, which we have done an integration for which we are doing this particular webinar, is with the Seclore. And at this stage, I would like to transfer this call to Vishal to take it to the next phase.
All right. Thanks a lot, Shashi. And I know there were delays on the network, so very well explained. Thanks a lot for that. So I think where I'm going to pick up the conversation where Shashi left off, which is let's assume that this confidential data is classified, it is discovered, and what you're seeing on the screen right now is that an employee has actually attempted to send this data to an outside, which was not allowed. Right? Now what do you do about that? Now one option, which of course is just block that communication, and that's always possible based on whether he should be doing it at all or not. But given the modern context, there is a good chance that that was a genuine requirement for that data to be sent. For example, transactional data may have been required to be sent to a vendor because he's printing out a statement and sending to the client, or a confidential contract needs to be sent to the lawyer because he needs to review and edit it, and so on. So a lot of times what we associate as confidential information is required to be sent to external agencies of different kinds, right? So it could be the client proposals, for example, or it could be an engineering drawing of the next nuclear power plant, right? It could be a service provider, like a lawyer or an auditor. It could be a business partner, or it could be an internal board member, right? So the board members are typically not working with corporate owned and controlled devices because they are typically not employees of the company, right? Almost by definition. So in all of these cases where confidential information needs to be sent to external agencies, and I'll redefine what external agencies mean in this case, but externally, then what happens to that information, right? So if you see the modern context and the reach of the DLP system, the primary purpose, and Shashi explained that very well earlier in the session, is to make sure that confidential information does not leave, or confidential information that should not leave the enterprise actually does not leave the enterprise, right? The reality, however, in a lot of cases is that information that needs to leave the enterprise may be, or is in a lot of cases, confidential as we collaborate with our suppliers, with third-party workforces, with working out of the enterprise premises, their own premises, clients, business partners, and so on. So one definition of what is outside may be external agencies of different kinds. The second definition of what is outside could be personally owned devices. So even within the enterprise and outside, when we are dealing with suppliers and third-party workforce, right, all of us are using mobile devices of different kinds, right, from tablets to personal laptops to phones, of course, and so on. And confidential data, whether it's by the employees of the company or by this third-party workforce, could be or is typically downloaded on uncontrolled, sometimes personal, mobile devices. Now what happens to this data once it reaches a mobile device, right? What is the span of control that can be exercised, right? One option is, of course, to make sure that the data never reaches the mobile device, right? Because it's confidential, it should not be downloaded, it should not be sent outside the enterprise network, and so on. So that's something which obviously implements the first line of defense. But that's something which is not always feasible because, then we are talking about reduction of productivity and so on, right? So one definition is external people. The second definition is external devices. And the third definition is external systems. So for example, if adoption of Dropbox or any of a cloud-hosted collaboration system or a editing system, document editing system is being considered, then what happens to all this data once it actually reaches the cloud, right? Who's downloading it? Because once it goes to cloud services, then the amount of control, the span of control over who's downloading it, on what device, using what network, and so on, reduces significantly because the cloud, by definition, is cloud, right? And where where this combination of the DLP and the IRM system, as I'm going to talk about a little later, comes in, is really making sure that the security policies and compliance frameworks which have been defined for within the enterprise extend to when this information is moving outside of the enterprise, right? So ideally, what should happen is that we should be able to define the rules for information usage within the enterprise, and then figure out a method by which the same rules and policies would extend to when we send data to our suppliers, right? But that can very quickly become a messy solution, right? Because then we are talking about extending enterprise security policies to suppliers, to third-party workforce, to personal mobile devices, and to cloud services, and so on. I think that can very quickly become a messy solution, because then it would require some kind of control over what is the device or the system that the supplier is using, or what mobile phones can be used, or what cloud services can be used, and so on. What is, however, possible is if the objective of the whole exercise is to protect the data and not really try and control the devices which the supplier is using or the internal employees are using, right, or the applications that are being used to communicate and collaborate, then one alternate approach to securing information could be that you take information, you take board meeting minutes, you take the nuclear power plant design and so on, and you put it together, let's say, and then around this information you define usage policies, right? So what I mean by usage policies is a usage policy is an answer to these 4 questions, which are: number 1, who can use this information? And the most important thing is that the answer to this who can use should be people within as well as people outside of the enterprise, because that's the whole purpose, right? Collaboration outside. The second is, what can each of these people do? Can they read? Can they edit? Can they forward it to their friends? Can they take printouts and so on? Right? So what actions can be performed by each of these people within or outside of the enterprise? The third is, when or how long can each of these people continue to use this information? So information sharing ideally should not be a one-way street. There has to be a mechanism to unshare information when relationships change. So employees are not employees anymore. Lawyers may not be the lawyer anymore, or your auditor may not be the auditor anymore, right, and so on. And as these relationships change, or service providers, right, as these relationships change, there has to be a mechanism to unshare information which has been shared with that employee or that service provider as a part of a relationship, right? So the next answer is, how long can each of these people use this information at all? And the last but not the least is, from where can this information be accessed? So can Indian banking clients' data be sent or consumed by outside of India? Or can data controlled by the EU, European Union security and privacy norms, be sent to Philippines, right, and so on? So physical locations, devices, networks, IP addresses, from where this data could be consumed, right? So this answer to who, what, when and where this information can be used from and by, right? Now all of these answers are embedded into the information itself. Right? So what we are saying is, traditional security tenets which have always relied on securing networks or devices or applications, now we are taking all those tenets, because securing the network, the device and the application are in most cases surrogate methods of securing the data. So we're taking all those tenets and we are saying, if you want to secure the data, we're just going to go ahead and secure the data and not worry about the device or the network or the application which is being used in the context of the data. Now once the data itself contains all of these security policies, right, then the enterprise doesn't really care where it's going or how is it going. So the data or the document, email, the information of different kinds, the information could be going to external vendors, right? It could be going to personal devices. It could be going to uncontrolled cloud services. And it does not really bother the enterprise, because the data itself is going with its security policy. Right? So by making security policies independent of infrastructure, it is possible to to implement security policies which have typically been defined for within the enterprise to situations where the data, confidential data, is going outside of the enterprise. And that's really where this partnership between Symantec and Seclore comes together, because Symantec DLP does a great job of, number one, discovering, classifying, as well as discovering where the data is, who's doing what, and so on, and therefore help in defining what should be the right policies around usage of this data. And then there is a handoff where Seclore, Seclore FileSecure, which is the rights management system, takes these policies and implements it on data which is going outside of the enterprise, right? So that there is uniformity in policies and compliance frameworks when this information is within as well as outside of the enterprise, right? So what I'm going to do here is just run through a very quick overview of what this first the standalone rights management system, and then what an integrated system looks like. And Seclore FileSecure and Symantec DLP and both the companies have invested significantly in making sure that these two systems are available as one single integrated system, right, which will implement security policies within as well as outside of the enterprise. So I understand I'm running a video here, and I understand some of us here may be on slower networks, so I'm going to take frequent breaks and describe what's happening within the video. But really the first step as far as the standalone rights management system goes is policy definition. Now this is the part where the Symantec DLP can come in and help enterprises discover and define what are the right policies associated with this information. So let's say in this example what we are saying is that there is a particular project called Project X, and there are all kinds of documents related to that project, and the policy, which is who can use Project X related documents, what can each of these people do, when and from where. Now this policy definition can be aided significantly by discovering what's actually happening to Project X related documents right now, right? So in this case, having discovered that using Symantec DLP, it's possible to incorporate this policy, and in the first answer, which is who can use Project X related documents, there could be different identity sources. So for example, employees' identities may be defined in an internal Active Directory system, whereas client's identity may be defined in an online banking system, and partner's identity may be defined in a Tivoli directory server, and so on. So where are these various people who want access to the system? Where are they? Right? Is flexible. So there's an identity federation system built in. Right? So we are still answering the first question, which is who are the people or groups of people who can access, or departments who can access Project X related documents. So we say, okay, there is a research team and there's an internal review committee who can access Project X related documents, but most importantly, we also need to provide access to this information to an external agency, let's say a temporary consultant, Mike in this case. Right? Now the most important thing here is that we are not saying that this confidential information, which may be, let's say, the next drug release for a pharmaceutical company, right, needs to be restricted to within the enterprise, right? Because there are external agencies. So the external agent can also come in and participate in the workflow of this drug design. But what can each of these people do, right, is controllers. I'm just going to go back here. So what can each of these people do? Can they view? Can they access it on their mobile devices, which is the light viewer? Can they edit it? Can they make changes to that content? Can they copy data out of it? Can they take screenshots? Can they print it out, and so on? So there is very, very granular controls over what can each of these people or sets of people do with this information. And then, of course, without spending too much time on it, so there can also be time and location-based controls. So for example, it's possible that the contract with the external agency may only be for the next 2 weeks. So you want to make sure that all the Project X related documents which have been sent to this external agency are automatically expired after 2 weeks, once the contract is over and that review or whatever is the value addition that the external agency has done is done. Now this is the first part, which is policy definition, and the policy definition bit can be significantly aided by first discovering what's happening to project X related documents. Right? The second part is really policy application. So there are various methods, and we are going to see the bit which is, the best bit is where there is no human intervention involved at all in applying that security policy to the actual documents or emails related to project X. Right? But I'm keeping that for later. One of the methods, a couple of methods which are possible are, as soon as the document is copied to a particular folder, right, it's possible to automatically apply the security policy such that only those people and Mike, who's the external consultant, can now start using this document. It's also possible to automatically or manually apply this policy as soon as an email is being sent out. Right? So an email is sent out, the document is attached, right? The policy is attached, what policies need to be provided to which people, which recipients of this email, right, can be defined either manually or one of the existing policies can be reused, and it gets protected. So the email content as well as attachments go protected. Right? And we are just going to cover 2 or 3 of these methods. There are tens, hundreds of these methods. Right? The same concept can be applied to SharePoint libraries or IBM FileNet libraries or Documentum libraries. So as soon as information is downloaded from a particular SharePoint library or Documentum library, right, it automatically gets protected and inherits those rights. What this allows is automated application or automated protection of documents. What this allows is that systems like document and content management systems, which have typically been restricted for internal use, can now be open to mobile device access or external participation. Right? Of course, once the policy is applied, and let's say on the recipient side, if one of the recipients, I receive this document, right? Once I try to access this document, then the system verifies that I am in fact one of the recipients who's the authorized recipient, and if I try to do anything which is not allowed, so for example, if I have a document open or an email, for example, and I'm not supposed to be editing it, and if I now actually try to edit this document, that's not allowed. If I try to print and I don't have print rights, that's blocked also. And as we'll see later, all of these actions are reported back also in the audit capability. Right? So if I try to copy and paste certain part of that document outside to another document or email, right, then the actual content is not copied, just a error message is copied and so on. So various controls over what can each of these external agencies do with this information. So if you've sent a document to your lawyer and he's just supposed to edit and send it back to you, well, that's exactly what he can do and nothing else. He cannot send it, he cannot reuse the enterprise legal contract templates outside to service all the other clients that he or she may have. The last interesting bit, which is I guess rolls back to what Shashi was referring earlier, is the audit capabilities, which is not only can confidential information be controlled as it's moving outside of the enterprise, it can also be monitored. So if you want to know what is the lawyer doing with it, what is the service provider or the external agency doing with this information, right, then the complete audit of who did what with this information, when and from where is gathered and reported back, and there's a reporting mechanism, and it integrates with the various SIEM systems so that the same audit trails can be imported and correlated in the SIEM system. So for example, in this case, for this information, project X related document, we can see that if you see the topmost row in this report here, that Mike, the external consultant, attempted to print this document, but he was not allowed. So all authorized as well as unauthorized activities are captured and reported back. Right? And that's really the power of the system, or the power of the combined technology, is complete audit trail while this information is within the enterprise, which is what Shashi showed earlier, as well as what is happening to this information once it has left the enterprise. Right? Now it's possible to completely audit the information itself without worrying about auditing individual systems and trying to go to vendors and performing vendor security audits and so on. So all of those can be significantly reduced, in most cases completely removed, by having information-oriented audits. Right? And just to complete this bit, the most important thing is, even if that information is received on a mobile device like an iPad or an Android phone, right? Let's say in this case that project X related document has been sent to somebody who's syncing the email on his personal device, and this could be an employee or an external consultant at an external agency. Right? When that information is received on the mobile device, the mobile agent will make sure that controls around the fact that he is the right person who should be accessing this information. Right? So he is in fact Mike, right? And that he has access, and making sure that if anything, and if you can, whoever can see this video playing out, if Mike, who's the external agent, tries to do anything which is not allowed, for example, if he tries to take a screenshot, his name and details will come in as a watermark to make sure that he does not circulate those screenshots, and most likely does not take the screenshot to start with, and so on. So there is a lot of control that is implemented for external users to, number one, easily consume this information, not make their life difficult, but most importantly, make sure that enterprise security policies are implemented on this information once it leaves the perimeter. Right. Shashi, do you want to add anything here? I'm going to shift to what the integrated system looks like next, but go ahead if you add.
No, I think Vishal, you have covered it excellently, so you can go ahead for the integration now.
Right, so what we have here is a demo now of what the integrated Symantec DLP and Seclore FileSecure solution looks like, and the neat thing about this integration, before we actually see what it does, is that it is completely seamless. There are interfaces which the Symantec and the Seclore team have spent quite some time and money building, which makes the whole handoff between when the information is being monitored and controlled by the DLP system and when it leaves the enterprise, it's controlled by the rights management system by Seclore. That is completely transparent to the end user, and in most cases it is also transparent to administrators and the IT and the security folks within the enterprise. So what I'm going to play out here is a demo of, and whatever I'm demonstrating is available live today. It's not something which is futuristic, in development and so on. This is something which is available. If anybody is interested, please feel free to contact Shashi or anybody from account executive at Symantec or Seclore. We're very happy to get into the details. But for now, let me just play out this video, where the first step is policy definition. Now this is the bit that we've already seen, where policies around different kinds of information, board communication or delinquent client lists. So for example, this is one of the actual deployments that has been done for one of the world's largest financial services companies, which has outsourced its delinquent customer follow-up and collections process to external collection agencies, right, of various kinds, right? So there is a policy for delinquent customer clients. So delinquent client data should be accessible by the revenue assurance group within the enterprise, as well as these two external partners to whom this information is being sent, right? And what can they do, and the fact that the partners should not be misusing this information. They should only access it 30 days, update the status, follow up, and so on, and send it back to the enterprise, and not misuse this data or sell it in the market, and so on. All of these policies are built into, all of these controls are built into this policy, which is called delinquent client list, delinquent customer list in this screen, right? Now that's about it. That's about all the work that is required from the Seclore FileSecure policy definition framework, which is defining who are the right people for this particular kind of data, what should they be allowed to do, for how long, and from where. Now, once that is done, the very simple thing here, and this is the stuff which is typically already done, is define discovery and response policies within the Symantec DLP system. So in this case, we've defined a very, very simple policies which will detect whether there is a particular keyword or a set of keywords which is overdue and credit card, right? Of course, there's no limitation here. It's all the rich functionality of policy definition based on fingerprints, based on keyword matching, based on pattern recognition, and so on. All of those rich capabilities of Symantec DLP can be used to define these rules, right? So what constitutes delinquent client data, right, is defined here. In this case, we are just detecting two very simple keywords, right? And then what should be the response once this kind of data is discovered? Either there's a transactional application which is using this data or creating this data before it is being sent to the external agency, right? Once the discovery of the data is there, what should happen to it? So the action here that is being defined using the flex response APIs of Symantec DLP is that this particular policy which we defined earlier it should be applied to the data, right? Now this bit that's where the whole process of administrative overhead really ends there, defining what is the rightful use of this data, and then defining how do you find this particular kind of data, right? These are the two things that need to be defined, and after that it's really very seamless. So let's say I'm a part of the revenue assurance group, the collections team of the enterprise, right? I create this or I download this delinquent client list from a transactional system, or I get it as an email, whichever way, right? The Symantec DLP system, and of course it needs to fit that pattern and or those keywords, right? Now once that data is received or is stored on whatever is the reach of the Symantec DLP system, right? Endpoints, network, and storage, and so on, right? The Symantec DLP agent automatically discovers, classifies this data as confidential, and automatically applies the Seclore FileSecure policy without any end user or human intervention, right? Now this is the neat part, because what we are saying here is that the dependence of human judgment of what is confidential data, what policies should be applied to this confidential data before it is being sent to the external agency, all of that is being removed from the end client, from the end user, right? So the only thing that the end user needs to do is just keep working as he would otherwise, and just follow the process, right? Whatever he's doing, if he's exchanging data over file servers or FTP servers or emails or USB drives if he wants, all of those regular processes can continue, and as soon as the data is discovered, it will automatically get protected. And of course, once this data is protected, now even if that piece of information reaches the external in this case the collection agency, those rights and policies will constantly get applied, and as we saw earlier. Then the other thing is that the auditing also has been combined. So in the Symantec DLP console, the fact that this data was discovered, which machine or which device was this data discovered in, what is the reason that this data was classified as confidential, and therefore what was the policy that was applied to this data, all of this is available centrally, right, without going to another system or shifting across consoles and so on, right? And all of this is of course available using the rich browser-based console of Symantec DLP, right? So a complete audit of what's happening to this information, and of course going back to what happens to this data once, let's say, an external agency gets this data is that the external agency will just be able to view this information, not forward it, you view it only for 30 days, after which it expires for that external agency, not be able to edit it in. So all the rich controls of Seclore FileSecure get implemented when this data is within the enterprise as well as when it's shared with external agencies. Right, so this is a very quick view, so I'll not run through the whole video which shows the controls that are that govern this data when this data is going outside. The thing that I do want to cover, however, is that this information is, or this integration is not limited to when specific keywords are being detected, but it's also integrated at the classification level. So Seclore FileSecure, the rights management system, also comes with a built-in manual classification, manual/automated classification method. And I'm just running through what that looks like, right? So again, the first part of the process is exactly the same, right? Where within the Seclore administrative console, what are the various classification policies? They can be defined and edited. It could be uniform at the enterprise level, or maybe legal team has their own classification and finance team has their own classification framework, right? The policy is defined and so on. So this part is common to what we saw earlier. I'm just waiting for so again, who can do what with this information, when, from where, and so on. All of these policies are defined within a centralized console, and all of this does not require any end user training or participation. All of this can be done centrally by our central information security team. It can also be decentralized to have, let's say, a process of business function level administration. Right. Now, the second part is also the same, which is based on specific patterns and keywords. Automated application of a Seclore FileSecure policy can be done by the Symantec DLP. So in this case, we are just saying that if the classification of that document is top secret, then automatically apply this particular policy to that content. Right, so let me just fast forward this a little bit. Right, now again, we go back to where this content is created or downloaded in the end user's computer, right, end user's device. Now, as soon as that device, document is accessed or closed, the Seclore FileSecure system automatically prompts the end user to classify this information. Right. So in this case, the classification is, in this case, top secret, because this is client data which is governed by various regulatory or compliance frameworks. And based on this classification, a policy, the right policy is automatically applied by the Symantec DLP, is now again protected, as it moves within as well as outside of the enterprise. Right. So, of course, immediately post this, we are happy to share all of these demonstration videos are also available freely on the internet. Please feel free to see these videos at your own leisure. The whole idea of this session was to show that there is a comprehensive handoff and integration between the very rich Symantec DLP and the very rich Seclore FileSecure to protect information within and outside of the enterprise. I want to spend some time on, and maybe Shashi, do you want to cover this on why have these two companies come together? Symantec and Seclore are both companies with recognized information security products, for many years now. Right? And what brought these two companies together was really a need for the best of breed DLP. And
yes. So I'll take it up. Thanks a lot, Vishal, for covering IRM in detail and the integration story which is there available for customers to use. One of the best point which gives to customer is both these solutions are best of breed, and it is available together for you to use it day one. Ready connector is available for seamless integration. You don't have to do research, or you don't have to do a development work to create something for this particular integration. The third thing is comprehensive data protection plan within and outside the organization. That's very important point. In both the presentations, both the sessions, we have understood that how important is to have both the solution working together so that it can protect you when the data is leaving out of the organization, as Vishal talked about. And I like some of the ideas as to if you're sending something out and you want somebody to keep keep that data for 5 days, they will keep it, and after that the document expires. Excellent stuff. So that gives you a complete protection. Then we talk about leadership position is expensive. I mean, when you look at Symantec DLP, we are there in the Gartner leader quadrant and leading the chart from last 8 years. And like Seclore has got Cool Vendor award from industry. Then both are having global clients and validated deployment frameworks, so you don't have to worry about how this will work in your environment, because we have this integration already working in some of the organizations. We have global consulting partners. See, one of the important things for such project to get successful is you need to have regular evaluation of the project, regular involvement of your business stakeholders, so that you can keep on fine-tuning the policy before you get into the blocking mode. So that's again another point which I want to discuss. Anything else, Vishal, you want to add?
I think the very important thing, the last bit, is that there are system integration as well as consulting partners that the two companies have together, who've got skills around both of these products, and therefore for larger deployments specifically, and these skills are available not only in a very restricted area, let's say only in the UK or only in the US or whatever. They are available all over. They are available in India, in the Middle East, in the Southeast of Asia, and of course in Europe and the US and so on. So it's globally available set of consulting partners who can help implement these systems internally, as well as roll out these systems or the usage of this technology when it's external usage. I think that's the only thing I'd like to add, Shashi.